So today we're going to take this 74 TY250. We're going to put electronic ignition on it. So the first thing we got to do is take off this skid plate. Now I've got this cool bucket here. This thing sits right on there, really nice. It's got a little pocket in the top of it, kind of cradles it. So I'm going to take the bolts out of the skid plate, then I'm going to have to drop it off the bucket, take the skid plate off, then put it back up on the bucket, because I don't have one of those cool rear wheel stands. But we'll make do. So I'm going to set this camera down, and we're going to get set up, get some tools out, and get going. Okay, so we're ready to start going here, and the first thing we got to do, this tube's pretty flexible. It should just pull right up and out of there. So we got to take the side cover off. So we got to get everything prepped to do that. I'm going to take these bolts out. There should be one here, same on the other side. That'll remove the skid plate. If you're wondering why my frame is blue, it didn't come that way. Somebody before me thought it was a nice color, so I just decided to keep it. It's a lot of work to paint a frame when you've got a running bike. Not something you really want to take apart to paint a frame when you could be out having fun. Probably a different story if I was going to restore the bike, or if it didn't run when I got it and needed to take the motor out or something, but I figure, why mess with it? Looks good, let's just leave it. I have had to do a few things to this bike, including fixing the existing ignition wiring, new points, condenser. But one of the problems that these bikes have is that the condensers will get a little warm if you're running them all day long. At least this is a problem I've had with mine. And you'll have to let it sit there and cool down for about 30 minutes before it'll start again. Then it'll run fine for a while, and then you'll get to the next section and won't start. Makes it really annoying. There's a lot of support for these bikes out there on the internet. You can get all kinds of cool stuff, different side covers and seat pans and fenders, and you can get Boyson reeds, and you can get all kinds of cool shocks, and there's a lot of support for these things out there, and with good reason. They're a good bike. One of the things that's been done to this one is the oil injection has been removed, so that we just run pre-mixed. A lot of people have been doing that. It's one less component to break, saves on weight. Now, as I've said, I've had this cover off before doing the ignition, so it should come off pretty easily. Original Phillips screws tend to be a little soft. So if you're doing this for the first time, you may end up wanting to do something like this. This is a hammer driver. You can put these Phillips bits in it, and you can get them in here, get them lined up. Wow, that one is really loose. Anyway, the idea is you put a little bit of counterclockwise motion, then you smack it with a hammer, and that translates to a lot of force being pushed onto the head of the bolt, holding the bit into the socket or into the head of the bolt, and it also rotates this at the same time when you smack it. You can get a lot of stuck bolts out with one of these. Yes, I did have to do that with this one the first time. And sometimes the bits are better than a screwdriver. So we'll just go ahead and use it like a screwdriver. See, that dish in the bucket's nice. I can sit this bike a little bit more at an angle and it doesn't fall right over. Now you're going to want to keep track of the order that you take these out in, because some of them will be longer than others. You got to get them back in the right spot. If you do happen to forget, this one, and this one are short. Now here, you're going to need a special flywheel puller tool once we get this nut off. These nuts are torqued to some amazing amount of foot-pounds. I'll have to look up the number and I'll tell you here in a minute. So when we go to put this flywheel back on, we got to hold this guy while we tighten this nut down to some astronomical number. But in the meantime, we're just taking stuff off. One of the things we're going to do, these old TY250s have this really heavy flywheel. And the old theory behind trials riding was you rev the engine way up, you let out on the clutch, and you bounce over the obstacle. Today's trials riding is a little different. You're relying on the power of the motor to propel you over the obstacle, not the flywheel. So today's trials bikes have light flywheels. They rev quickly, they come down quickly. These old bikes tend to rev up slow and then they stay up there. You let off the throttle, they'll keep spinning. So today's trials rider, going from a new bike to an old bike, this can be a challenge. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to put this in the lathe and turn down this weight, take a lot of this weight off of this flywheel. We'll show that in another video. For now, we're just getting to these electronics. Now, getting this flywheel off, you've got to hold this thing still. So we made this tool. Pretty simple, but it does the job. Sometimes. There we go. You could probably make a better tool than this. This is just what we had available at the time. Now here's where that tool I said comes in play. It's going to engage these threads right here on this flywheel, and it's going to push against this and it just pops that guy right off. It's really nice. You can get them at most motorcycle shops. Some of the kits for the electronic ignitions will come with them. We got ours a while back. It's like I said, we were messing with those points. Fun stuff. So here's the tool I was talking about. Remember I said I got ours a while ago? Well, in a pinch, and I mean when society has crumbled and you can't go online to get motorcycle parts and zombies are eating people outside your door and you really want to ride trials and you really want to get your flywheel off, one of these will work. Barely. I mean barely. You can see this is not what you want to use. This is what you want to use. So short of a zombie apocalypse, use one of these. They're pretty cheap. So you're going to want to pay close attention to these threads because a lot of times they'll be kind of rusty, nasty. So I've gone ahead of time and taken a nice little file like this and gone round and round and round them. These are left-handed threads in here. So you want to make sure that those are all cleaned out. Then take your favorite spray, whatever it is, WD-40, doesn't matter. Give it a little shot. Make sure you get this guy lined up just right, because if you mess up these threads and you can't use this tool, you're waiting for the zombie apocalypse to get your flywheel off with that other puller, because that's the only time you're allowed to use that other puller. Make sure you haven't cross-threaded them, just double check. Make sure you thread it in there far enough, because if you don't thread it in there far enough, you'll end up pulling the threads out. And then, guess what? Zombie apocalypse. This should be a 5/8 on mine. I don't know about yours. And this part of it's right-handed. So watch here, make sure you're not pulling these threads out when you start to tighten this down. And there she comes. Just like that. So, got your flywheel, and she's out. So in here, you got these magnets. This kit that I have, it's going to retain this original flywheel with these magnets. That's how it's designed. But we're not going to have to rely on this cam lobe right here to run these points, or this condenser. I'll show you more about turning this flywheel weight down, but we're going to leave as much of this section right here as possible, but we're going to take a lot of this weight right off of there. So the kit I got comes with all kinds of little goodies. New Sparky, boot, kill button, that'll be nice. The CDI is built into the coil, which is handy. Less parts to have to hang somewhere. Here it is. Now this is what's going to take the place of this plate. If you notice, this one, just 3 bolt holes, no adjustment. There's a line and a line, but that doesn't matter because there's no adjustment. This guy is adjustable, and the coil CDI box has a built-in advance curve to it. So as the engine RPM increases, more timing, it's great. So next we get to pull this plate off. Now with mine, I didn't put any sealant on this gasket because I knew I'd be taking this thing on and off and on and off. Just a couple little dabs here or there just to hold it on. So I'm going to go ahead and see if I can get this guy to peel off of here nice and gentle like. There we go. Because we're going to have to take this out too. There's the ugly little monster. So you've got a couple different coils on here for lighting and for ignition, and we really just don't care anymore. Now up here, this thing plugs in, so it looks like we're going to have to take the tank off as well. So for future reference, you'll want to take your seat off first and then take your tank off before you start any of this. Things you learn. So I have my ignition set up, ran up, zip tied on. It's all nice, compact, looks good, but now we got to cut it all off because we've got a new set of wires and a new coil. Now up inside this pocket right here, you can access this from the front. It's kind of handy to have a couple spare items. I carry a spare spark plug in there. Two strokes like to foul out plugs if you get your fuel mixture wrong, so it's always good to have a spare. You don't want to be trail riding, get caught way out in the woods without a spark. Now, it looks like with my kit there's some fabrication required. Oh, maybe not. What's this right here? Yeah, those holes don't line up. So, my new cool CDI box coil, all in one, it doesn't mount the exact same as my old coil did. So, I'm going to have to make a little bracket to adapt this guy on here. See, where do we want to set this? How do we want this to go on? I don't know. Probably something similar to what the last one did. And maybe something like that. That doesn't look too bad. Everything would reach. So I can put a bolt in here, and then I can make a little bracket to come over and pick up this one. Yeah, I think that's what we'll do. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the video so you're not looking at the side of my bike for 20 minutes while I make a bracket wondering, is he coming back? What's going on? Zombie apocalypse? We'll be right back, okay? Okay, so we got our nice and nifty little bracket. It's got a little bit of a bend in it. Now this is just something I found laying around with a hole in it, so I put another hole in it and cut it to length. Should do okay for us. I had to do a tank fit test just to make sure that the tank's going to clear this, and it barely clears. So that's something you want to be careful when you're deciding the position where to mount your coil, making sure that the tank is still going to go on. Leave the bolt loose so you can get this thing lined up. It'll all move around a little bit. You'll want to tighten this bottom one first, because that's going to set this position. Then you can make sure that there's no gaps between your metal up here, between this and this, and this and the coil. Because if you tighten this one down and then you go to tighten these down, you could put some flex in this guy if your bracket isn't bent just right. Could end up cracking here over time. Okay, so we've got our bracket adjusted right, everything's bolted down, nice, good and tight. While you weren't looking, I went ahead and mounted the kill switch up right between the handlebar clamps there. So that's going to run down into here also. We're going to take our plate, and it's going to sit right about here. I know this because this grommet's only that long. Not because I read some instructions. Oh no. Actually, I did read instructions. So there's a gap right here, and that's kind of your first guess as to where it's going to go. Then you get to rotate this guy until your screws start to line up. And instructions say go ahead and mount it so that the screws are about midway through the slot. So that's what we're going to do. It should give you a good starting point to get this thing adjusted in. We'll start it out right about there. I'm not going to tighten anything down yet because we're going to be adjusting it anyway once we get the bike running. Plug's going to go right in there. Now you probably want to put a little bit of silicone sealant down in here. keep water from running in. Now with your wiring, you're going to want to run it up here nice and easy, and then you're going to want to coil this guy up somehow, tie it up so you don't have a bunch of loose wire. It's going to come out and get caught on anything. The way this guy wires up, your kill switch wires, black with a white stripe, black with a white stripe. Those get plugged together. The world is still round, everything still makes sense. That is good. Now here, your black wire coming from your ignition, it's going to go on your lower spade terminal, the one further away from your spark plug wire. See if we can get this guy to plug on there. There we go. And then your blue wire is the middle one. And then this goes to ground. You can ground this to the same bolt that you use for your coil bracket up here. That's what I'm going to do here in a minute. For the most part, other than tidying up some wires, there you go. It's on. Now the next video is going to take care of trimming down the flywheel, getting a lot of that weight out of there. You want to get about as much as you can off of that thing. So we'll talk about that in the next video.